Hello. Today we're going to be exploring the future of digital asset trading and how Bitcoin SV can contribute to that. My guest is the General Manager of Fabriik Markets, which is promising to, quote, transform, hold, trade, and grow every asset you own. Well, Fabriik itself is owned by the Toronto-based Bayesian Group, and from there, I'm delighted to be joined by Stephen Walt. Hi, Stephen.
Hey, thanks for having me.
You're listening to CoinGeek Conversations with Charles Miller.
Well, thank you very much for coming on the show. Now, let's start perhaps with you could give us an overview of Fabriik Markets, because there are a lot of different businesses that you're in, or at least compartments that they fit into. I've been reading about market making, liquidity provision, and custody, and so on. So can you just give me a sort of thumbnail sketch of the business?
Absolutely. So Fabriik Markets is really the digital asset services arm of the Fabriik Group. We have three main services that we've developed. The first, as you mentioned, is market making. The second one is something that we call liquidity provision. And the third is our white glove OTC desk. So I'll start with market making. Market making is a service we provide to typically non-anonymous, decentralized digital asset issuers, as well as exchanges. And it's a service that we provide to thicken up order books. So when you look at an exchange and you look at all the orders, we make markets, we add orders into the order book, and we really improve liquidity and the overall trading experience. With liquidity provision, it's an API-based trading service. And what that means is it's programmatic trading. If you want to build some code to trade with us, that's exactly what we do. And I would say most trading shops have an API, but what we do on top of that is that we absorb the price risk. And what I mean by that is, you and I both know digital asset prices change every second. We're looking at BSV, fluctuating $1 every couple of minutes here. What we do is we use some really outstanding algorithms that are developed by our in-house quants and PhDs to forecast volatility and try and fix a price for up to 15 minutes. So it's useful for those such as payment processors or BTMs that want to provide time to their customers to transact. So we provide a stable fixed price for up to 15 minutes.
So you're taking the risk on that?
Exactly. Yeah, we take a educated risk where we try and forecast what volatility will be, and we price accordingly. So we quote on a all-in net price, and what that means is, let's say BSV we quote for $200. That's your all-in execution price, and we will honor that price for up to 15 minutes, depending on how much time our customers want.
Right. So this is, let's just, just to get to an even more basic level, you only deal with decentralized digital assets, right?
Exactly, that's correct.
That's a fairly limited, what are we talking about there? We're talking about Bitcoin, three kinds of Bitcoin?
Exactly, BSV, BTC, BCH right now. We won't deal with the anonymous digital assets out there, such as the Moneros of the world.
So is it just those three, or are there others?
We also support, we plan on supporting Ethereum, others as well. Really not limited so much by the type of let's say coin. It's more we can support anything our potential customers would like. However, if it's an anonymous currency, we will not support that.
Right. And when you talk about, was it thickening the order book?
Yes.
It sounds like you need to sort of produce a whole lot of money and trades and everything to happen at the same. I mean, where does all that come from? Where do you access those resources?
That's a great question. It's a great question. So let's say an exchange wants to improve their liquidity on a certain trading pair. Let's say it's BSV USD. What we can actually do is we have inventory, and we can plug into other exchanges and liquidity venues and we can pull in liquidity from those venues into that exchange. Where, for example, let's say there's an order to buy BSV on another exchange, we can mirror that into an exchange and using our inventory.
So you are making trades in order to make that happen, and you're buying things in order to make that happen, are you?
We put limit orders out there, so we will not actually we don't artificially inflate any kind of volumes. There'll only be trading activity on the exchange when someone trades with us, someone external in the market. So if somebody, for example, on the exchange we're trying to supply liquidity to, does take out our order, we might then go ahead and hedge that order on another liquidity venue.
Right. So you're providing a kind of backup against bad things happening.
Exactly. And say Charles, you were an issuer, a digital asset token issuer, and you wanted to list your token. At day one, there might be one trader in the market, there might be two traders, but nobody really may be there at the beginning. So that's where we come in, and we use our proprietary technology and inventory to place bids and asks to really form a market for this token, and it ensures proper price discovery.
Right. So we're going to get on to tokenization in a minute, I hope, but just in relation to what you've talked about so far, how innovative or how much competition is there out there for this kind of business that you've described?
There's a lot of competition in the space, particularly when it comes to market making, as well as OTC, which I'll be talking about very shortly. I'd say less so on the liquidity provision side. And as I mentioned, what I think we're planning on doing with liquidity provision is really disruptive when it comes to absorbing the price risk for up to 15 minutes. I don't really see anyone out there doing that. On the OTC side, there are a lot of OTC desks. And just to summarize what we do there very quickly, we help institutions such as hedge funds, asset managers, as well as individuals looking to transact higher than, let's say, $100,000 US at a time. We help them buy or sell digital assets, and that's our OTC white glove service. And there's a lot of people doing that. What we do differently is we're planning on launching a number of different algos. And what I mean by algos are different ways of executing an order. So most desks out there, Charles, they quote a single price, and which is fantastic. So let's say you wanted to buy BSV, they'll say your all-in execution price is 200. We do that, but what we're planning on doing as well is offering additional ways of entering into or exiting out of positions. So for example, let's say you have a really large position. You're a hedge fund with a $100 million position. We're planning on having the ability for that fund to use some traditional algorithms that are available in the traditional financial space, but catered towards the digital asset space. So for example, I'm not sure if you've heard of something called a TWAP, a time weighted average price algorithm. It basically takes a big order and splits it over a longer period of time to reduce market impact. We've adapted that, and we're planning on launching that in the future for institutions to use.
Right. Your own background is in the more traditional financial markets, I think, before you got your current job. I mean, how much is what you're talking about simply a question of taking accepted practices and methodologies and applying it in this new area of digital assets?
Yeah, I would say most of my experience is traditional finance. I've been involved in digital assets for a long time, and there are so many similarities between the two. I think ultimately where the digital asset industry is right now, maybe the traditional asset industry was 20, 30 years ago. It's still very, very early days in my opinion. So we can borrow a lot of the things from the traditional asset space into the digital asset space. And we're seeing that with institutions coming into the space and bringing best practices and a lot of different innovative services to the industry, such as, for example, OTC-based trading.
Well, if you want to expand the digital asset side of things, is it better that people on the traditional end of things think, oh, it's pretty much the same? Or do you want to emphasize how different it is and the new opportunities?
I think ultimately what we're trying to do is enable a system for the billions that are locked out and the billions that are locked in to play in the digital asset space. And oftentimes what's familiar is what works the best. So we're trying to build simple products that people understand and can say, oh yeah, I know how a stock works, so I know how to buy a digital asset. So we're really trying to take that approach in most areas, and we're trying to make things very, very simple. What we've seen are those that have been successful are the ones that can best really take what people are used to and apply that to the digital asset space.
Yeah, I mean, when you talk about helping the billions who've been locked out, well, as you mentioned, your minimum trade starts at $100,000. What does that really mean then? How are the billions going to benefit from this?
At the Fabriik Group overall, we're planning on launching a number of things, including an exchange, a custody business, and the exchange, for example, could be more oriented towards microtransactions. But what we're doing at Fabriik Markets is really trying to focus on the trade aspect. And if you, for example, were wanted to buy $1 worth of a new token that wouldn't otherwise have a market, we're there to support that. Right. And for example, if you custodied, if you had $100 in a custodial account, we're the one if you want to form a block transaction with, let's say, there were 1,000 other users that want to do the same thing, we can facilitate that liquidity.
Right. So, well, let's get on to the more innovative end of things, shall we? Which is, I think, around tokenization. You've said that you're going to be able to, the users are going to be able to create these pure utility tokens, and that to start with, they won't neither possess nor represent monetary value. So perhaps you could just describe, in fact, I talked to your colleague Eric Bernhardt about this a while ago, presumably at a slightly earlier stage of its development, but would you just explain what these tokens are if they have no monetary value?
So utility tokens are typically tokens that are created for use on a platform. If you think of like a loyalty token, mm-hmm. Or something like that, ultimately we think that there's a lot of opportunity on the tokenization side, and that is one area. That's just one area of what we're doing at the Fabriik Group, and how it kind of plays into Fabriik Markets is that we, for example, if you want to tokenize something, if you want to tokenize a painting. We can be the one that supplies the liquidity to that market. But when it comes to how could something have non-monetary value, there's many different areas of what tokens can be and their utility. So if you, for example, wanted to trade on an exchange, they can provide you their own token that can be used to lower trading fees or something like that. Or you can use it to vote on the direction of what the exchange does next when it comes to the next listing or something like that.
Yeah, because you've got a tool which allows anyone to create their own token very, very simply. And in fact, when I was talking to Eric, he was talking about teachers could create tokens that would, reward pupils and stuff in a classroom, which is a nice idea. But I mean, just going back to what you mentioned about like tokenizing a painting, for instance. What would be the legal side of that? If I said, right, well, in fact, you can see a painting on my wall here. It's a photograph a friend of mine took. If I wanted to tokenize that, and I said, well, let's be kind and say it's worth £100. And then I went onto your thing and I said, right, I'll create 100 tokens for this thing. How would that actually work? I mean, how would somebody who owned a bit of the token be able to really relate it to the object itself?
Ultimately, let's talk about the high level process. You would take that painting and store it with a custodian, and that custodian will verify that, for example, that is authentic painting and it's worth £100. Then they can issue, let's say, 100 tokens. Ultimately, the price of that token is determined by supply and demand. So there's only 100 tokens, and the market will tell you what those tokens are worth. If in fact the painting is worth £100, the tokens in theory should trade around £1 per token.
Right. So you don't have to decide what it's worth. You just create X number of tokens, and then when people start buying and selling them, you'll find out what it's worth, I suppose.
Exactly, and that's what I love about the free market is proper price discovery. And let's say that painting tomorrow then gets appraised. We find out it was a very rare painting and is actually worth $1 million. Well, in theory, people in the marketplace will be bidding up the price of the token to match that of the true value of the painting.
But it does depend on some reliable custody of the painting itself continuing, doesn't it? Because if somebody unlocks it and goes down the market and sells it in a couple of years' time, these tokens, whatever they may in theory be worth, aren't really worth anything at all.
That's a good point. In the case of a painting, I think, it does require proper custody of the painting.
Right. Well, okay. So you've got this tool for creating tokens, and that's great that it's so simple. Are you thinking that, for instance, fiat currencies could be turned into tokens using this kind of tool?
I think it's definitely a possibility. I'm not a legal expert, but I think there might be some legal implications towards creating a token that's backed by, let's say, a currency. The platform is very flexible, and it's one that we love. We look forward to supporting with Fabriik Markets. Whether it be a new token that's listing on an exchange, and we want to become the market maker, or if you have a large supply of that token and maybe their liquidity on an exchange isn't very high, you can come when we're launched to our OTC desk, and we can help you liquidate, or if you wanted to buy a large block of those tokens, we can also help you.
I mean, you have said on your website that you're working towards offering security tokens and stable coins. So that's in the same sort of area, I suppose.
It would be, yes. And obviously the support for those would be subject to the acquiring the appropriate licenses.
Right. And then what about customized smart contracts? What sort of potential do you see there?
I think there's a lot. And I love to get Eric to join us on the discussion today, but there's a lot of opportunity on that side. You can see, obviously, Ethereum has done very well with smart contracts. I think there's a huge opportunity on the BSV network. We don't have to get into the scalability, and I think there's a lot to do. At Fabriik Markets, we're primarily focused on digital asset services supplying. We want to become the one-stop shop for liquidity.
Right. You've recently acquired MoneyButton. What was the thinking behind that, and what does MoneyButton bring to the party as far as you're concerned?
Ultimately, as I said before, we feel that people gravitate to things that are simple and they understand. Ultimately, as I said, the digital asset space is still in its early days, and there's a lot of complications. Not many people know how to store digital assets. Not many people know how to even acquire them in the first place. The thinking is that ultimately we think people are going to need a centralized place, a wallet, from which they're going to be able to really manage their own finances. So if you want to store digital assets such as BSV, or if you want to store tokens created from the painting, that would be the central place to do so.
Right, because MoneyButton has announced that it is now able to deal with tokens as well, I guess. Is that...
That's the idea. We want it to become a central place for all things. So tokens, digital assets. That's the vision.
Just tell me about your relationship to BSV, because it's not just trading BSV, but it's actually using BSV as a platform as well, I think, isn't it?
Exactly. Generally speaking, I think we believe that there's a lot of power that comes with the BSV ecosystem. The blockchain is extremely scalable, and we've chosen it, for example, to support tokenization. And we think it's a fantastic blockchain to use in order to tokenize something. And on the market side, we're planning on supplying a large amount of liquidity for BSV. So we believe that it is a great digital asset and ecosystem to support. Great.
I mean, there's been so much activity in the BTC market over the last few weeks. It just seems to have just gone crazy, really. But I mean, what's the fallout from that as far as your business is concerned, or does it actually not make that much difference?
So when we launch these products, ultimately for a business that is trying to supply liquidity, the more trading that occurs, the better. The more volatility that occurs, the better. So the prices that we've seen over the last few weeks is overall very positive for the industry. And as a result, I believe it's very positive for Fabriik Markets. It legitimizes the industry, it brings in it attracts a lot of new entrants, and those entrants will have liquidity needs. If they, for example, want to buy or sell a large block of BSV or BTC, that's something that we're planning on supporting. There's many different areas that we can work there. But overall, I think the prices that we've seen recently are very, very positive for the whole digital asset space.
Yeah, I mean, does it surprise you at all that Bitcoin SV's price hasn't really moved in anything like as dramatic a way as BTC, for instance?
It does, candidly. When sometimes in the traditional space, you see certain stocks that are, in your view, they could be undervalued, and you're wondering why. If with all the public information, why hasn't that price changed? And this is not investment advice whatsoever.
No, we don't give investment advice on this program.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. So for when it comes to BSV, candidly, I am surprised that it hasn't, had as big of a run as BTC, particularly when you consider the fact that it can scale, but also the ratio between BSV to BTC is at near an all-time low. So it is very, very surprising.
Well, there's obviously an awful lot going on, Stephen. What are you looking forward to seeing happen in the business over the next 6 months or a year, perhaps?
We're looking forward to launching market making, liquidity provision, and OTC. And more specifically on OTC, we're really looking forward to helping institutions and individuals transact, not just in spot markets, but obviously subject to licensing derivatives as well.
Just hang on 1 second, because just for anyone who's not familiar with it, OTC is over the counter, and that is a sort of, well, you describe it sometimes as a white glove service, which I rather like. It's to do with, you don't actually get a butler, but you do have your own sort of real human being that you can talk to as a trader. Is that right? And that's why it's a kind of premium service.
That's correct. And if our potential customers would like a butler, that's something we can absolutely explore. But it's really, as I said before, the space is oftentimes confusing. And we will walk any institution or individual through the process and provide best practices. And you can speak with humans. Hey, what's the price of this? What's the price of that? How does this work? That's really the approach we take. And we're seeing a lot of demand, not just for spot transactions. When I say spot, I mean buying BSV and receiving delivery of the BSV, but as well as derivatives. And we mentioned earlier in our discussion, Charles, there's a lot of institutions stepping into the space, and those institutions will want things such as options and futures, and we're looking forward to supporting that.
Great. Well, Before you go, let me just ask you a very basic question. How many people work for Fabriik Markets? Just give me an idea of the actual office or whatever it is.
Yeah, well, in these interesting times, offices are very different. But at the Fabriik Group, we have around 100 employees.
Right, and is that growing?
That's growing every week.
Great. Well, and maybe one day you'll all be able to turn up in the same space and actually say hello to each other.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to that day. You know, I when I joined the company, it was much smaller, and I've been fortunate enough to see it grow from a handful of people to around 100 today. And most of those people I haven't even met in person.
Right. Well, it's been great talking to you, Stephen. Thank you so much for your time and really interesting discussion.
Thank you very much, Charles. Thanks for having me.
Not at all. Bye now.
Bye-bye.
Thanks very much to Stephen Walt from Fabriik Markets. And Stephen tells me that Toronto's even colder than London this week, although he loves it as a city. Thanks very much for listening to this CoinGeek conversation, and there'll be another one next week. So until then, from me, Charles Miller, goodbye.
We are delighted to present you with Bitcoin SV Academy as a source for your personal and professional development. Whether you are a student, developer, blockchain business professional, or digital currency enthusiast, you learn more about Bitcoin from our online courses. At the very core of everything we do at Bitcoin SV Academy are high-quality and comprehensive online courses focused on educating people correctly about the design of Bitcoin system and the power of its blockchain technology. We partner with technical experts and industry leaders to ensure courses are developed to academic standards. Our online courses focus on 3 subject streams: Bitcoin theory, Bitcoin development, and Bitcoin infrastructure. Let's take a quick look at each stream. Bitcoin theory covers the design of Bitcoin as a system, from the basis of the original Bitcoin white paper posted in 2008 by Satoshi Nakamoto, Bitcoin's pseudonymous creator. We'll examine how economic incentives drive the development of the network and build the hyperdense connectivity at its center. Bitcoin development focuses on providing up-to-date tools and techniques for application builders who want to use Bitcoin as a basis for their technology projects. Bitcoin infrastructure focuses on the machinery and mechanics of the network and ledger to explain how the network is built and massively scales. You start with the free Bitcoin introductory courses before diving deeper into each stream with intermediate and advanced courses. You will have the opportunity to earn a certification after completing each course. Our Bitcoin program allows you to adapt the curriculum to your life. You can learn at any time convenient for you. It's self-paced, so you can go as fast as you want or as slow as you need. Our learning platform creates an engaging and connected experience wherever you are in the world. So if you're ready to acquire new knowledge about Bitcoin blockchain technology and learn transformative ideas to power your professional performance and business, join us online at Bitcoin SV Academy.